My dear ones, if you are listening to my voice right now, sit close and keep your hearts open, because what I am about to tell you is not just a story of a necklace, but of love, betrayal, secrets, and the kind of treasure that cannot always be worn around one's neck. You see, sometimes the true treasure hides in places no one dares to look. And before I begin, let me just whisper something in your ear. If you enjoy these stories from my heart, do press that little button that says subscribe and leave me a comment, because I promise there are truths buried in the lives of grandmothers like me that you would never imagine. Now, let me take you back into the old English house where I have lived most of my life. Its walls are tall and heavy with history, lined with books, photographs, and the scent of polished oak. To outsiders, it looks like a place of peace. A lovely old home where roses bloom at the windows and the grandfather clock ticks steadily by the staircase. But behind these walls, my family's voices have often risen like storms, echoing against the plaster, rattling the frames. It all began, I suppose, with a necklace, a delicate chain of gold with a small emerald pendant, passed down to me from my mother and to her from hers. To me, it was more than just jewelry. It was memory. It was love. It was survival. My mother wore it when she married my father, and she pressed it into my hand on the night she passed away. Her words still haunt me. Keep it close, and it will protect you. But never let greed touch it. At the time, I didn't understand. For years, the necklace sat safely in my jewelry box, resting among pearls and silver trinkets. I would wear it on rare occasions, feeling my mother's presence around my neck, her warmth at my shoulder. But my children, oh my children, they looked at it with very different eyes. The quarrel started on a Sunday afternoon, when the house was filled with that unsettling silence. The silence that comes after too many polite words have already been spoken, and the tension hangs in the air like damp fog. My eldest son, Arthur, broke it first. "Mother," he said in that sharp tone of his, "it is time we discuss what will become of your possessions. You are not getting any younger." His wife, Beatrice, sat stiffly by his side, her lips pressed so tightly they almost vanished. I laughed gently at first, trying to brush it aside. "Arthur, my dear, I am very much alive. Can we not enjoy the roast before carving up my future?" But he didn't laugh. Neither did my daughter, Margaret, who sat on the other side of the table. Her eyes narrowed, her hand resting on her husband's knee as if to steady herself for battle. It was Margaret who uttered the words that sliced me to the bone. "The necklace should come to me. It was always Mother's wish, wasn't it?" "A daughter for a daughter," Beatrice gasped, as though Margaret had committed some scandalous crime just by speaking. "How dare you?" she hissed. "Arthur is the eldest. Tradition demands that the most valuable heirlooms pass through him. That necklace belongs to us." And just like that, the house that had seen laughter and lullabies turned into a battlefield. Voices rose, hands slammed the table, the chandelier above trembled. They weren't speaking of me, not really. They were speaking of gold and emeralds, of inheritance and power. I sat there, clutching my napkin, watching my own children, the ones I had nursed through sickness, kissed goodnight, and prayed for at every turn of life, fight like vultures over a single necklace. My heart ached in ways I cannot describe. Tell me, my dear listeners, have you ever watched the ones you love tear each other apart over something so shallow? If you have, then you know that pain eats you from the inside, like moths gnawing at silk. But here is the twist. And listen carefully, because this is where the story darkens. The necklace they fought for so bitterly was not the real treasure. No. What they had no idea about was the truth I had kept hidden for decades. You see, my late husband, God rest his soul, was a man of business. He was clever, secretive, and cautious. When he passed away, everyone thought he had left behind nothing more than the house and a modest account. But what they never knew was that years ago, before illness claimed him, he had taken me by the hand and whispered of a locker at the bank, a locker where he had tucked away things too precious to speak of aloud. One day, he told me, you may need this when the wolves circle. And so, while my children screamed about a necklace, on that Sunday afternoon, I sat there quietly, my mind drifting to the cold metal of that locker key, hidden in a box of sewing needles upstairs. My lips trembled, not because of the fight before me, but because I knew something none of them did. I wanted to shout it out, to tell them they were blind fools, clawing at crumbs when a feast lay hidden just beyond their reach. But no, my mother's warning rang in my ears. Never let greed touch it. And so I stayed silent, though every shout, every accusation, every insult carved deeper into my heart. Margaret was weeping now, her voice shrill. You always favored Arthur, but this one thing, this necklace, is mine by right. It's all I ask. Arthur slammed his fist on the table, his face red with rage. Enough of this nonsense. That necklace belongs to me. If you won't give it, Mother, then I will see to it that the will is contested. The word contested struck me like ice. Was this what they thought of me? A corpse already laid out, waiting to be picked apart. My voice shook as I finally spoke. Stop this, both of you. Have you lost your humanity? I am still alive, and you speak as though I were already in the grave. But they didn't stop. Their voices rose again, tangled with anger and greed, drowning out my pleas. And I knew, in that very moment, that the necklace had become a curse, not a blessing. Oh, my dear ones, I need to ask you here. Do you think I was wrong to keep silent about the bank locker? Should I have told them the truth? Stop them in their tracks? Leave me your thoughts in the comments, because even now, I wonder if my silence was wisdom or cowardice. That night, when the house had fallen silent and the echoes of their fight still lingered in the hallways, I crept upstairs. I opened the old sewing box, my fingers trembling, and there it was. The little iron key, dull with age, yet heavy with promise. I held it in my palm and whispered to my late husband, "They are not ready. They will never be ready." And that was when I decided the necklace, cursed though it had become, would stay in plain sight as their distraction. But the true treasure, the one that could change their lives forever, would remain hidden in the bank locker until the time came when someone proved worthy of it. My dear listeners, if you are still with me, do give this story a like, for it encourages me to share more, and subscribe, because the next part of this tale will take you deeper into secrets that no one in my family, not even my children, could have guessed. I could not sleep that night. The air in the house was heavy, not with peace, but with the remnants of anger that clung to the wallpaper, the curtains, even the pillows on my bed. I tossed and turned, listening to the creaks in the old staircase and the faint ticking of the grandfather clock downstairs. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been, as if the house itself were restless, whispering about the quarrel that had erupted under its roof. I lay there, clutching the key to the bank locker in my hand, my knuckles white around it. My husband's voice echoed in my ears. When the wolves circle, you will know what to do. The wolves were here, circling, their teeth bared, and they were not strangers at my door. They were my own children. I wept silently into the darkness, not because I was afraid of losing possessions, but because I felt I had already lost the greatest treasure of all, their love, their respect. What use is gold, jewels, or hidden treasure if the people you cherished most in the world only see you as a stepping stone to reach it? Morning came with no relief. The light slanted through the lace curtains, painting patterns on the floor that once would have filled me with joy. But today, those patterns looked like cracks. Cracks in my family, cracks in my heart. I went downstairs to find Margaret sitting stiffly at the table, her eyes swollen from crying. She didn't look at me. Instead, she stirred her tea endlessly, the spoon clinking against the porcelain, like a metronome of misery. Arthur entered a moment later, his face set like stone. Beatrice trailed behind, her nose turned up as though she were already the lady of the house. They did not greet one another. They did not greet me. The silence between them was far louder than any of the shouts from the day before. At last, Margaret spoke, her voice hoarse. "Mother, I cannot stay here, not while that thing hangs over us." She meant the necklace. She spat the word as though it were poison. She gathered her coat, her handbag, and without another word, she left. The slam of the door made the windows rattle. Arthur turned to me, his eyes blazing. "You will settle this, Mother. It belongs to me, and I won't let Margaret steal what is mine." I wanted to scream, to shake him, to remind him of the nights I sat by his sickbed when he was a boy, the way I prayed over him, the sacrifices I made. But what good would it do? His heart was set, hardened by greed. Instead, I said softly, "Arthur, what you are fighting for is not worth the cost of family." He sneered. "That's easy for you to say, Mother. You've had it all your life. You don't understand what it means to secure the future for my children. That necklace is security. That necklace is legacy." I almost told him then. Almost revealed the key clutched in my pocket. Almost told him of the locker at the bank that held not just jewels, but documents, savings, bonds. Enough to secure his children's future, and Margaret's as well. Enough to end their quarrel forever. But the way he looked at me, not as his mother, but as an obstacle, froze the words in my throat. Instead, I said, "You will regret this path, Arthur. One day, you will see." He did not answer. He stormed out, dragging Beatrice behind him. And once again, I was left in silence, the house feeling emptier than ever before. My dear ones, let me pause here and ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have revealed the secret of the locker, or would you have kept it hidden, waiting for a sign of worthiness? Tell me in the comments, because I still wrestle with this choice even now. The days that followed grew darker. Margaret sent me letters, pages filled with pleas and accusations, demanding that I give her the necklace before Arthur took it. Arthur, on the other hand, began sending his solicitor to the house, asking questions, making suggestions about wills and inheritance. Beatrice was the worst of them all. She began visiting more frequently, snooping about the house, peering into cabinets, rifling through drawers when she thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I caught her in my bedroom. She was holding my jewelry box in her hands, her face pale when she saw me in the doorway. "I was only tidying," she stammered. I closed the door behind me, my voice low and steady. "Beatrice, you must leave." She had the audacity to smirk. "It's only a matter of time, you know. Arthur will see to it that the law gives us what is rightfully ours. You may as well hand it over now." Her words cut me, but I did not let her see. I simply took the jewelry box from her hands, placed it back on the dresser, and turned my back. She left, muttering under her breath. And I knew then that greed had poisoned them so deeply that even the sanctity of my room was not safe. That night, I sat in the rocking chair by the fire, the flames dancing, shadows flickering across the walls. I held the necklace in my hand, the emerald gleaming in the light. My mother's words echoed louder than ever. Never let greed touch it. And yet here it was, greed clutching at it from every corner. I whispered to the fire, perhaps I should burn it, end this misery once and for all. The thought terrified me, but also tempted me. For what is an heirloom compared to the peace of a family? But then another thought came, a darker one. What if I let them tear each other apart over this necklace, while the true treasure lay untouched, safe, hidden? Would that not be justice in a way, to show them how blind their greed had made them? My dear listeners, do you see how twisted my thoughts had become? This is what greed does. even when you are not the one holding it. It infects. It seeps into your very bones, making you question everything. The weeks passed, and the quarrel became the only conversation in the family. Neighbors began to whisper, "The children are fighting over her jewelry," they said. Can you imagine? The shame of it weighed heavily on me. But then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived from the bank. A reminder, polite and formal, that the locker had not been accessed in years. My hand shook as I held it. The universe, it seemed, was reminding me of the secret I still carried. I hid the letter quickly, but not before Margaret, who had come to visit that day, caught sight of it. "What's that?" she asked sharply. "Nothing of importance," I said, tucking it into my pocket, but her eyes narrowed. Suspicion had been planted, and I knew it would not die easily. That night, as I lay in bed, the house groaned with the weight of secrets. I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft, hesitant. I rose, clutching the key in my hand, and opened the door. Nothing, only shadows stretching long across the floor. But I knew then, they suspected. Perhaps not the full truth, but enough to make them search. The necklace, once a symbol of my mother's love, had become bait, and the real treasure, the one in the bank locker, was the prey they did not yet know existed. I swore to myself that I would protect it, no matter what it cost me, even if it meant keeping the ones I loved most at arm's length, even if it meant dying with the secret still buried. My dear ones, if you are still with me, do give this story a like, for it tells me you wish to hear the rest. And subscribe, because the next chapter will unravel what happens when suspicion grows into obsession, and when a hidden key can shatter a family forever. The key never left my side after that. I wore it on a ribbon beneath my blouse, close to my heart, as though it were a locket of a lost love. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I would hold it in my hand and feel its weight, reminding myself that it was more than just a piece of metal. It was a promise, a shield, and perhaps the last fragment of trust my late husband had placed in me. But the walls of this house are not deaf. Secrets whispered into the air have a way of seeping through the cracks, of curling into corners where greedy ears wait. Margaret, I could sense, had begun to suspect. Her eyes lingered too long on my pockets. Her footsteps echoed behind me whenever I moved from room to room. She was searching, though she did not yet know what for. It was one Tuesday afternoon when I caught her trailing me. I had gone to the study to fetch a book, and when I turned suddenly, there she was in the doorway, pretending to dust the frame of an old painting. Her hands trembled as she moved the cloth. Her cheeks flushed when she saw I had noticed. "Mother," she said quickly, "I was only helping. You shouldn't climb ladders at your age. You'll hurt yourself." Her words were honey, but her eyes, oh! Her eyes were sharp daggers, probing, calculating. I smiled softly, masking the storm inside me. "Thank you, my dear. But some corners of this house are meant to be left alone." She lowered her gaze, but I saw the flicker of frustration cross her face. She wanted to ask, to demand, to dig deeper, but she did not. Not yet. Later that evening, as I rocked in my chair by the fire, I wondered if I had become too clever for my own good. By keeping the treasure hidden, had I turned my children into hunters of shadows? Was I, in truth, feeding their obsession rather than protecting them? Tell me, my dear listeners, if you were in my shoes, would you reveal the truth to stop the torment, or would you guard it even tighter, knowing the greed it might unleash? Write it down below in the comments, for sometimes an old woman's heart longs to hear the wisdom of others. The tension grew thicker each day, until even the servants could no longer hide their unease. They whispered in the kitchen, glancing at me with pity in their eyes, as if I were already a ghost haunting my own house. One of them, young Clara, approached me timidly one morning. "Ma'am," she said, her hands twisting in her apron, "forgive me for speaking, but the fighting, it's frightening." The house doesn't feel the same anymore." Her words struck me, because they were true. The house that once rang with laughter and song, now echoed with suspicion and greed. I took her hand gently and whispered, "Do not be afraid, child. Some storms come only to test the strength of the roof. This house has seen worse." But inside, I wondered if even these walls could endure the storm that was brewing now. Then came the moment that shook me to my core. Arthur returned one evening with a look in his eyes I had not seen since he was a boy. A look of triumph mixed with mischief. He sat across from me in the parlor, tapping his cane against the floor. "Mother," he said smoothly, "I've been speaking with the bank. Quite by accident, of course. Did you know they send letters when accounts are not touched for many years?" My blood turned cold. He knew. Not the details, not the full truth, but enough to send the wolves closer to the door. I forced a smile. "And why should that concern you, Arthur? Do you now monitor my post as well?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I only care about your welfare. If there is something you are hiding, don't you think it best to tell your children? We could help you manage it." His words dripped with false concern, but his eyes burned with greed. I could not bear it. I rose from my chair, my hands trembling. "Arthur, I am your mother, not your quarry. Whatever lies within my life is mine to carry. You will not pick at it like a scavenger." His lips curled. "We'll see." And with that, he left, the door slamming behind him so hard the glass rattled. My knees buckled. I sank back into the chair, clutching the key beneath my blouse, and I wept. I wept not because of the treasure, but because my children, my own flesh and blood, had turned into hunters circling me, waiting for me to falter. That night, I had a dream. My husband stood by the fireplace, his eyes kind but firm. "You must choose," he said. "The treasure was never meant to divide them. It was meant to save them. But if you wait too long, it will become their ruin." I woke with tears on my cheeks, my heart pounding. The choice he spoke of weighed heavily upon me. To reveal or to conceal. Both paths seemed to lead into darkness. And then, as if fate itself were listening, Margaret made her move. I found her in my room the next morning, rummaging through the sewing box. The very box where once, long ago, I had hidden the key. But she was too late. I stood in the doorway, watching as she grew frantic, tossing aside spools of thread, needles scattering across the floor. When she finally noticed me, her face turned ashen. "Mother, I was only looking for what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "For truth or for treasure?" Her lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes. I just want to know why Arthur always has more. Why you always give him everything. Was there something else? Something you never told us?" For a moment, my anger softened. She was not entirely greedy. She was wounded, jealous, desperate for love. I crossed the room and placed my hands on her shoulders. "Margaret, my dear, what I have kept to protect you, both of you. But the way you and your brother claw at each other, it breaks my heart." She shook her head, pulling away. "You don't understand. He'll take it all, Mother. He'll leave me with nothing. And you'll just let it happen." Her words sliced through me. She stormed past me, leaving the room in disarray, and I sank to my knees, gathering the scattered needles with trembling hands. My heart ached with the truth I longed to tell, yet still I held back. The necklace became a shadow in the house. Wherever I went, I felt their eyes on it. At dinner, they would glance at my neck, their forks pausing mid-air. In the evenings, I would hear whispers behind closed doors. Even in church, during Sunday service, I caught Margaret staring at me, her lips pressed tight, her eyes burning with questions. And yet, through it all, the key never left my side. It was the last barrier between them and the truth. The truth that could either heal or destroy us. One stormy night, as the rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled like a beast outside, I sat once more by the fire, the necklace in one hand and the key in the other. The flames danced, crackling, as if urging me to make a choice. I whispered into the emptiness, "When is the right time? When will they be ready?" But the house gave me no answer, only the sound of thunder, rolling deep and angry across the sky. My dear ones, if you are listening now, don't forget to give this story a like, because it tells me you are walking with me through this storm. And subscribe, because the next part will reveal the moment when my children's suspicions turn into a hunt, and the treasure in the locker edges closer to being uncovered. The storm that night did not end with the rain. It lingered, stretched into the following days, settling over the house like a veil of suspicion. My children had stopped pretending to be polite. Their visits grew sharper, their words more pointed, and I felt as though every step I took was being measured, every glance weighed, every pocket checked in their minds. I could not go to the market without someone trailing me. Margaret suddenly found excuses to accompany me on errands she had never cared for before. "Let me help you with the baskets, Mother," she'd say, her eyes fixed not on my face, but on my handbag. Arthur, too, made appearances that startled the neighbors. He would arrive unannounced, pacing the halls, poking his head into rooms, as though inspecting them for some hidden prize. Even the servants began to notice. Clara, sweet child, whispered to me as she cleared the teacups one morning, "Ma'am, they watch you like hawks. I fear they'll tear this house apart if you don't stop them." I smiled weakly, though my heart was heavy. Let them watch, Clara. Sometimes those who stare hardest see the least. But inside I felt the pressure growing. I could not keep this secret forever. The key pressed against my chest like a weight of guilt, and each night I dreamt of my husband's voice, urging me to act. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I had gone into town to collect some letters from the post office, and as I turned down the narrow street toward the bank, I felt eyes on me. My heart pounded. I glanced over my shoulder, and there she was, Margaret, half hidden beneath her umbrella, pretending to browse the baker's window. I continued walking, my steps deliberate, the key burning against my skin. When I stopped by the bank, just for a moment, her body stiffened. She thought I didn't see, but I caught the flicker in her eyes, the quickening of her breath. I did not enter, of course. Not that day. Instead, I walked past, my chin held high, as though I had business elsewhere. But I knew now that the game was no longer mine alone. Margaret had her suspicions, and soon she would drag Arthur into them. That evening, as the family gathered for supper, the tension was unbearable. Margaret's gaze never left me, and Arthur, sensing something, kept asking questions. "Mother, where were you today? Did you visit anyone of importance? Did you go to the bank, perhaps?" I set down my fork, my hands trembling. "Arthur, I am not a child. Must I account for every step I take?" He smiled thinly. "When those steps concern the family's future, yes." The fire crackled in the hearth, and I felt the walls close in around me. The necklace lay heavy against my chest, but heavier still was the key beneath it. I could not eat. I could not speak. Their eyes stripped me bare, searching for answers I refused to give. That night, I locked my bedroom door. For the first time in years, I feared my own children might force their way into my private world. I sat awake, the candle flickering low, listening to the creaks of the old house. Once, I thought I heard footsteps pause outside my door, a hand testing the handle. My breath caught, and I clutched the key tighter, whispering a prayer into the silence. The next morning, I decided to act. If they would not stop hunting shadows, I would show them light, but only a glimpse. I summoned Arthur and Margaret together, something I had not done since the quarrel began. They came reluctantly, their faces set with suspicion. "My children," I began, my voice shaking, "you tear each other apart over a necklace that was meant to unite, not divide. Have you forgotten who you are? Have you forgotten me?" Arthur scoffed. "This isn't about forgetting, Mother. It's about fairness. About what is owed. Margaret's voice cracked. You always favored him. You never cared for what I wanted. Their words pierced me, but I raised my hand. Enough. If you insist on fighting, then hear this. The necklace is nothing. It is only gold and stone. There are things in this world more precious than either of you understand. And one day, you will see that, their faces twisted with confusion, anger, curiosity. I saw the spark in Arthur's eyes, the hunger in Margaret's. Perhaps I had said too much, but I could not take it back. They left the room together, whispering fiercely as they went. I knew then that the secret was no longer safe. In the days that followed, I felt hunted. Drawers had been moved, papers disturbed. Once, I found Arthur in the attic, rummaging through old trunks under the guise of searching for photographs. Another time, I discovered Margaret lingering in the study, her hands tracing the spines of books as though one might conceal the secret she sought. The final straw came when Clara confessed to me in tears. Ma'am, forgive me, but they offered me money to watch you. To tell them if you ever went to the bank, my heart broke. To bribe a servant, to stoop so low. My children were unrecognizable. I held Clara's hands and whispered, You must not be ashamed. Wolves often lure the lamb with promises of silver. But you are no lamb. You have been faithful. She wept, and I sent her away with reassurances. But inside, I trembled. My children would stop at nothing. One evening, I decided to test them. I left the house with the key in my pocket, walking slowly toward town. I could feel the air buzzing behind me, as though unseen eyes followed. At the corner, I turned sharply and entered the church instead of the bank. I knelt, pretending to pray, though my eyes were on the door. And there she was, Margaret. She slipped inside a few moments later, pretending surprise. Mother, I didn't expect to see you here. I smiled sadly. Nor I you. We both knew the truth, though neither spoke it. She stayed by my side, kneeling, her eyes darting to my hands folded in prayer. She searched for the bulge of the key, though she could not see it. When we returned home, Arthur was waiting. His eyes burned into mine as he asked, Did you accomplish what you needed today? I said nothing. Silence was my last weapon, but silence, I realized, would not hold them off much longer. The more I hid, the more they would claw. The treasure in the locker was no longer mine alone. It had become a phantom that haunted the house, whispering to them in their dreams, driving them mad with curiosity. One night, I dreamt again of my husband. He looked at me sternly, almost with sorrow. If you keep it from them, it will destroy them. If you give it, it may still destroy them. But the choice is not about treasure, my love. It is about truth. Truth always demands a price. I awoke with tears staining my pillow. The wind moaned through the chimney, and the clock struck 3. I rose, lit a candle, and stared at the key in my trembling hand. The time for hiding was nearly over. My dear listeners, if you have followed me this far, bless you. Give this story a like, so I know your hearts are still walking beside mine. And subscribe, because the next part will reveal the night everything unraveled, when my children finally cornered me, and the truth of the bank locker burst into the open, like a secret too heavy to stay buried. The night it all came undone was not marked by thunder or lightning, as one might expect in a tale such as this. No, it came quietly, under a pale, watchful moon, when the house itself seemed to hold its breath, as though it too feared what was about to happen. I had grown used to the uneasy silence of my children by then, the way their words cut more sharply than knives, and their glances stripped me bare. But that evening, their silence was different. It was heavy, purposeful, like the air before a storm that doesn't crack but crushes. We sat together in the drawing room, the 3 of us. Arthur, stiff-backed, his cane tapping rhythmically against the rug. Margaret, her fingers twisting the hem of her handkerchief, eyes darting between me and her brother. And I, in my chair by the fire, the necklace around my throat, the key beneath my blouse. 2 talismans. 1 seen, 1 hidden. Arthur cleared his throat first. His voice was measured, calm, almost rehearsed. Mother, this charade has gone on long enough. Margaret and I have discussed matters. We know there is more than the necklace. We know there is something you are keeping from us. Margaret leaned forward, her voice quivering but determined. Please, Mother, we cannot bear the secrets anymore. If there is something in the bank, if there is a locker. Her words trailed off, her cheeks flushing with guilt at speaking them aloud. My blood turned to ice. The word locker had been spoken at last, summoned into the open like a ghost that could never be put back in its grave. I clasped my hands tightly in my lap, willing them not to tremble. You have no right to dig into my affairs. Whatever I have, whatever I choose to keep, it is mine until I am gone. Arthur's jaw tightened. Mother, be reasonable. We are your children. We deserve to know. Deserve? The word left my mouth like a curse. I rose slowly, my knees stiff, but my voice steady. What you deserve, Arthur, what you both deserve, is a family bound by love, not by greed. But look at you. Scavengers clawing at bones before the body is cold. You shame me. You shame this house. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but she did not back down. We only want what is ours. Why won't you trust us? I looked at her then, really looked, and for a flicker of a moment, I saw not greed, but desperation. A daughter who felt unseen, unloved, overshadowed by her brother. My heart ached, but the key beneath my blouse burned hotter still, as if warning me, they are not ready. I turned from them, my hand brushing the mantel where photographs of their childhood stood. Smiling faces, innocent eyes, laughter frozen in time. Do you remember, I whispered, the Christmas when your father carved the wooden horse for Arthur, and the little dollhouse for you, Margaret? Do you remember the joy on your faces? Neither answered. Their silence was an admission. Those memories meant nothing against the gleam of gold and the promise of treasure. Arthur rose, his cane striking the floor with a sharp crack. Mother, if you will not tell us, then we will find out ourselves. You cannot hide it forever. And with that, he left, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled. Margaret lingered for a moment, her tears shimmering in the firelight. Mother, why do you make us beg? Why do you force us to fight? You think you are protecting us, but you are destroying us. Her voice broke, and then she was gone too, her footsteps fading down the hall. I sank back into my chair, the firelight dancing across the necklace, the key pressing like a brand against my skin. My hands shook as I covered my face, and for the first time in years, I prayed aloud. Lord, give me strength, for I do not know how to save them. That night, sleep eluded me. I heard them moving about the house, whispering in corners, footsteps pacing the hallways. Once, I thought I heard the study door creak open, though I had locked it myself. I sat awake until dawn, clutching the key, my eyes burning with exhaustion and grief. The following morning, Clara approached me in the kitchen, her face pale. Ma'am, she whispered, I should not say this, but I overheard them last night. They plan to follow you. They say they will go to the bank themselves. My heart lurched. Did they say when? Soon, she said, wringing her hands. Arthur mentioned tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word thundered in my ears. Tomorrow my children would storm into the bank, demanding answers, shaming me in front of strangers, dragging the secret into the light, whether I willed it or not. I dismissed Clara gently, then sat alone at the table, my tea untouched. The decision loomed before me like a cliff edge. Should I go to the bank before them, empty the locker, hide the contents elsewhere? Or should I let them see, let them confront the truth their greed had begged for? My husband's voice returned to me, calm but firm. Truth always demands a price. That afternoon, I took a walk through the garden, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, the roses wilting in the chill. The house loomed behind me, tall and somber, and I thought of all the years it had sheltered us, the laughter it had once held. How had it come to this? Children turning into predators, a mother turned into prey. I stopped by the old oak at the edge of the garden and pressed my forehead against its bark. "Tell me," I whispered to the tree, "how does one choose between silence and ruin?" But of course, the oak gave no answer. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house filled with shadows, I made my choice. I would go to the bank the next morning before they could. I would face the truth myself. Whatever the locker held, it would no longer stay hidden. I did not sleep that night either. I sat by the window, watching the moon cross the sky, the key resting in my palm. When dawn finally came, pale and cold, I rose, dressed, and tucked the key into my handbag. My hands trembled, but my heart was firm. As I stepped into the hallway, I caught sight of movement at the top of the stairs. Arthur, leaning against the banister, watching me with narrowed eyes. Margaret behind him, pale, her lips pressed tight. "Going somewhere, Mother?" Arthur asked smoothly. I clutched my handbag tighter. "Yes, and where I go is my business." He smiled, but it was not kind. "Then perhaps we'll accompany you. For your safety, of course." My dear ones, my heart pounded so hard, I thought it would break free of my chest. They knew they would not let me go alone. The day I had dreaded was here at last, and as I stepped out into the cold morning air, my children flanking me like guards escorting a prisoner, I knew that the secret of the locker would not remain mine much longer. My dear listeners, if you are still with me, bless your hearts. Do give this tale a like if it holds you, and subscribe, because in the next part, I will tell you of the day we walked into the bank together, and how the truth within that locker tore apart everything I thought I knew about family. The morning air bit at my cheeks as we walked to the car, the cobblestones slick with dew. Arthur, with his cane clicking in sharp rhythm, strode with determination, while Margaret trailed slightly behind, her shawl drawn tightly around her shoulders, and I, caught between them, felt as though the walls of my world were closing in. The ride to the bank was suffocating. No one spoke. The only sound was the purr of the engine and the occasional tap of Arthur's cane against the floor. My fingers itched to clutch the key hidden in my handbag, but I forced them still, resting them neatly in my lap. To show any sign of fear would be to give them more power than they already had. When we arrived, the old stone bank loomed above us, stern and unyielding. Its tall columns and iron railings cast long shadows on the pavement. For years, I had walked through those doors alone, greeted with polite nods by clerks who knew me well enough not to ask questions. But that day, with my children at my side, I felt exposed, stripped bare. The manager, Mr. Whitaker, greeted me with his usual deference, though his eyes flickered curiously to Arthur and Margaret. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "How may we assist you today?" "I wish to access my private locker," I replied, my voice steady, though my heart thundered. "Of course, ma'am," he said, bowing slightly. "This way, if you please." Arthur stepped forward, his voice firm. "We will accompany her." Mr. Whitaker hesitated, his brows knitting. "I'm afraid that's not our usual—" "She is our mother," Arthur cut in, his tone sharp. "We have a right to know." The manager's eyes darted back to me, silently asking for guidance. My throat tightened. For a moment, I considered forbidding them, asserting my rights. But what good would that do? They would not leave me be. If not today, then tomorrow. If not here, then at home. So I nodded once, curtly. "They will come." Mr. Whitaker inclined his head and led us down the long corridor, past heavy wooden doors and iron grills, until we reached the vault. The smell of polish and cold stone hung in the air, the sound of keys and locks clicking, echoing like whispers of secrets long kept. At the end of the hall, he stopped before a steel door and gestured. "Here we are." He unlocked the gate and ushered us inside a small private room. Against one wall, the locker awaited, its number engraved in brass. My hands trembled as I reached into my handbag, fingers closing around the cool metal of the key. For a heartbeat, I considered slipping it back in, feigning forgetfulness, buying myself time. But Arthur's gaze was fixed on me, unrelenting. Margaret's breath came quick, shallow, her hands twisting in her lap. I stepped forward. The lock accepted the key with a soft click. My children leaned closer, like wolves scenting prey. I turned the key slowly, the tumblers shifting, the sound loud in the silence. Then, with a final twist, the door swung open. Inside was a plain metal box. Nothing ornate, nothing dramatic, just a box, unmarked, waiting. My fingers brushed against it as I lifted it free, my arms straining with its weight. I placed it on the table. For a moment, none of us moved. The three of us simply stared, the air thick with anticipation. "Open it," Arthur commanded. I hesitated. My heart pounded, my breath shallow. All these years, all the secrecy, all the whispered warnings from my husband. It came to this moment, and I feared, more than anything, that what lay within would break us. But my hands betrayed me. They reached forward, unlatched the lid, and lifted it open. The gasp that escaped Margaret's lips was sharp and strangled. Arthur's eyes widened, his cane clattering against the floor as he leaned closer. Inside the box, stacked neatly, were bundles of papers, tied with string, deeds, certificates, letters, and beneath them, velvet pouches heavy with coins, and small boxes glinting with jewels. The fire of emeralds, the deep blue of sapphires, the glimmer of pearls. Treasures collected, preserved, untouched. But those were not the true heart of the box. Beneath the glitter, at the very bottom, lay a single leather-bound book, worn, its edges frayed, but unmistakably precious. Arthur reached for it, but I slapped his hand away, surprising even myself with the sharpness of the gesture. "No," I hissed. "That is mine to reveal." His face darkened, but he held his tongue. I lifted the book gently, cradling it as though it were a child. The weight of it was heavier than gold, heavier than jewels. My husband's diary. I opened it, the familiar scroll dancing across the yellowed pages. And as I read aloud, my children's faces shifted from greed to shock, to something far deeper. "My dearest Eleanor," the first page began, written in his steady hand. "If you are reading this, then my time has passed, and you are left to guard what I could not speak aloud. Within this box lies not merely wealth, but a truth our children must one day know. The jewels and coins are but a distraction. The true treasure is in the investments I made, the properties I acquired, the bonds I secured. They will ensure a future for Arthur and Margaret, but only if they learn the value of trust, patience, and love. If they come to this box divided, it will destroy them. If they come united, it will save them." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. Arthur leaned heavily on his cane, his face pale. I turned the page, my voice breaking as I continued. "Teach them, Eleanor. Do not give them all at once. Show them that greed will strip them bare, but love will make them rich beyond measure." I stopped, unable to go on. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Arthur was the first to speak, his voice raw. "So all this secrecy, it was Father's doing?" "Yes," I whispered. "He trusted me to guard it, to guard you. But you made it a war, a battle over a necklace, when the true treasure was meant to be shared." Margaret's tears fell freely now. "Oh, Mother, what have we done?" Arthur's jaw worked, his pride battling with something softer. For a moment, I thought I saw remorse flicker in his eyes, but just as quickly, it was gone. He straightened, his voice hard again. "Then let us divide it fairly. At least now we know." "No," I said firmly. closing the book with a snap. You are not ready. Not yet. These jewels, these papers, they will remain here until you can stand together without tearing each other apart. Until you learn to value each other more than what lies in this box. Arthur's face darkened. You cannot keep it from us. We are entitled. My voice rose, echoing in the cold chamber. You are entitled to nothing but my love, and even that you squander. This treasure will not pass to vultures who see only gold and not the blood that earned it. When you can look at each other and see a brother, a sister, not a rival, then, and only then, will you inherit what your father left. Margaret sobbed, sinking into a chair, her shoulders shaking. Arthur stared at me, his fists clenched, his jaw tight, but he said no more. Mr. Whitaker, who had lingered politely outside the door, returned when I rang the bell. I handed him the box, my voice cold but steady. Return this to the vault. It is not to be touched again until I say so. Yes, ma'am, he said softly, his eyes betraying the weight of what he had overheard. As the box was carried away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. The secret was no longer mine alone. It had been laid bare, the truth spoken. But what it would do to my children, what it would carve into their hearts, that remained to be seen. We left the bank in silence, the weight of unspoken words heavier than any treasure. The necklace at my throat felt suddenly trivial, a bauble compared to the storm that now brewed between us. As we drove back through the streets of our quiet town, I looked out at the people walking by, laughing, carrying baskets, living their simple lives, and I wondered, did they know how lucky they were, untouched by the curse of wealth, untainted by the hunger it breeds? When we reached the house, I lingered at the doorway, my hand on the frame. I turned to Arthur and Margaret, my voice low but firm. If you love me, if you love the memory of your father, you will prove yourselves worthy. Until then, the treasure will sleep, and so will my trust. Then I stepped inside, leaving them standing in the cold. Two shadows bound by blood, but divided by greed. My dear ones, if this tale still holds your heart, I ask you kindly, like this story, share it with those who may need its lesson. And do subscribe, for what comes next is darker still. For when secrets are revealed, wounds open wider, and my children's hunger was not yet sated. When we returned from the bank that day, the house did not feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where shadows rehearsed betrayal, where the walls absorbed our silence and threw it back at us, heavier each time. I sat in the drawing room, the fire hissing low, while Arthur and Margaret retreated upstairs. Their footsteps echoed above, but no words followed. Even their arguments had quieted. And that silence frightened me more than shouting ever could. I stared into the flames, the warmth licking my face, but inside I was frozen. The box, the jewels, the diary, all locked away again, and yet their power lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. I had shown them just enough to reveal the truth, but not enough to satisfy them. That was the danger. Hunger, once awakened, never sleeps again. Later, as twilight bled into night, I heard the creak of the stairs. Margaret descended first, her eyes red-rimmed, her shoulders hunched beneath her shawl. She approached me hesitantly, as though I were a stranger. "Mother," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to come to this. I thought Father had left nothing for us. I thought all you cared about was that necklace. But when I saw the diary, his words..." She stopped, choking back tears. I reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. "My darling," I said softly, "your father left enough to secure your lives 100 times over. But wealth is not a gift if it poisons the soul. He wanted you to understand that." She nodded slowly, but her eyes betrayed the fear beneath her sorrow. "Arthur won't let this go. You know how he is. He'll find a way. He thinks it's his right as the eldest." My heart sank. And what do you think, Margaret? She looked down, her voice trembling. I think if you don't give it to him, he will take it. Before I could answer, the door banged open, and Arthur strode in, his cane striking the floor with angry precision. His eyes flashed, not with grief, but with fire. Mother, this farce has gone on long enough. You've dangled secrets and trinkets before us for years, but no more. I've spoken with Mr. Whittaker, and he says the locker belongs to you alone, which means that once you are gone, everything passes to us. Margaret flinched. Arthur, don't. He silenced her with a glance. So here is what I propose, Mother. Spare us the waiting. Spare us the charade. Hand it over now. The deeds, the jewels, the diary, all of it. We will divide it as we see fit. I rose slowly, my bones aching but my spirit steady. And if I refuse, Arthur's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Then you will have declared war on your own children. His words struck me like a blow. I had known greed could twist the heart, but to hear my son, my flesh, my blood, speak so coldly, it was as if the boy I once rocked to sleep had died, and in his place stood a stranger wearing his face. Arthur, I said, my voice low but firm, your father trusted me with this burden. He knew you were not ready, and today you've proven him right. If you strip me of it now, you strip yourself of honor, of decency, of love. And what good is treasure if the hands that hold it are filthy? His jaw tightened. Fine, keep your secrets. But know this, Mother, patience has its limits. One day soon, that box will be mine, whether you bless it or not. He turned and left, his footsteps echoing like gunfire up the stairs. Margaret collapsed into the chair opposite me, her face buried in her hands. He'll ruin us all, she whispered. I leaned forward, taking her hands in mine. Not if we stand together. Not if you remember your father's words. Love, Margaret. Only love can save us. But even as I said it, I wondered if love was enough to heal the wound Arthur had torn open. That night, I could not sleep. I walked the corridors of the house, the key heavy around my neck, the necklace cold against my skin. The portraits of ancestors stared down at me, their painted eyes unyielding. Did they judge me for failing to raise children who valued blood over gold? Or did they know, as I did, that greed is a shadow that grows in every heart, and sometimes it devours the light? At one point, I paused outside Arthur's door. From within, I heard the low murmur of his voice, steady and deliberate. For a moment, I thought he was praying, but then I realized he was writing. His pen scratched furiously across paper, pausing only when he muttered to himself. Plans, perhaps. Schemes. I moved on, my heart heavy. When dawn came, I found Margaret already in the garden, pacing among the roses, her shawl trailing in the dew. She looked up, startled, when she saw me. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. I keep hearing Father's words. They haunt me. He wanted us united, but Arthur will never bend. I touched her cheek gently. Then it falls to you, my dear. You must be the bridge. You must find a way to reach him. Her eyes filled with tears. And if I fail? Then this family will shatter, I said, my voice breaking. And no treasure in the world will mend it. The day passed in uneasy silence. Arthur locked himself away in the study, emerging only for meals, his face a mask. Margaret hovered near me, as though afraid to leave me alone. Clara, the maid, watched us all with wide, worried eyes, but said nothing. By evening I was exhausted, my spirit frayed. I sat once more by the fire, the house heavy with tension, when Arthur entered suddenly. He stood before me, his gaze hard. Mother, he said, I've made my decision. Either you hand over the key now, or I will take matters into my own hands. Margaret gasped, rushing to her brother. Arthur, please don't do this. But he pushed her aside gently, his eyes never leaving mine. What will it be, Mother? Will you give me what is mine, or will you force me to dishonor us all? I rose, the key burning against my chest. My voice trembled, but I held my ground. You speak of honor, yet your words reek of greed. You think this treasure is yours by right, but it is not treasure that makes a man rich. It is his soul, and yours, Arthur, is poorer than beggars in the street, his face contorted with rage. Enough! If you will not give it willingly, then you leave me no choice, Margaret cried out, clutching at his sleeve, but he shook her off, and in that moment I saw clearly. My son was no longer a boy I could scold or guide. He was a man consumed, blinded by hunger for what lay in that box. I clutched the key beneath my blouse, whispering a silent prayer. Hold fast, Eleanor. Hold fast, my dear ones. If you are listening still, bless you for bearing with my weary heart. Do not forget to like this tale and subscribe, for what comes next is darker still. In the next part, I shall tell you how Arthur's threats turned to actions, and how one night in this house changed everything forever. The night that followed Arthur's ultimatum was the longest I can remember. A chill settled over the house that no fire could banish. Even the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall sounded louder, heavier, like a drum counting down to some inevitable doom. I retired to my room, though I knew sleep would not come. I bolted the door, an act I had never before deemed necessary in my own home. The key to the locker hung from a chain around my neck, resting against my skin like a brand, a constant reminder of the burden I carried. I lay in bed, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house, each sound sharpening my nerves. At some point past midnight, I heard it, footsteps, slow, deliberate, measured. They stopped outside my door. My heart froze. The handle turned gently, but the lock held. A pause, then retreating steps. I clutched the key tighter, tears stinging my eyes. My son, my flesh and blood, had tried to steal from me in the night. When dawn came, I was not surprised to see Arthur at breakfast, his face calm, as though nothing had happened. Margaret sat across from him, pale and shaken, avoiding his eyes. Clara served the tea in silence, though her hands trembled as she set the cups down. She had heard it too, I was sure. Arthur looked at me across the table, his voice smooth, almost polite. You should not make things harder than they need to be, Mother. The longer you keep this up, the more you invite trouble. I met his gaze steadily, though my hands quivered around the teacup. If trouble comes, Arthur, it will be of your making, not mine. Margaret could bear no more. She slammed her spoon down, her voice breaking. Enough! Can you not see what you are doing? You are tearing us apart. Father's words were clear. The treasure was to unite us, not divide us. And yet here you are, treating it as a prize to be snatched. What would he think of you now? Arthur's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought I saw shame flicker across his features. But then it hardened into something darker. Father is gone. It falls to us now. And if Mother will not act, then I will. He rose from the table, his cane striking the floor like a gavel, and left without another word. The day passed in unbearable tension. I stayed mostly in my room, the door locked, the key pressed against my chest. Margaret hovered near, wringing her hands, begging me to leave the house, to stay with relatives until Arthur calmed. But I could not leave. This was my home. This was where my husband's memory lived, where his words lingered in every corner. To abandon it would feel like surrender. By evening, the storm broke. I was sitting by the fire in the drawing room when Arthur entered, his cane tapping sharply. Behind him came two men I did not recognize. Rough-looking, their coats shabby, their eyes cold. Margaret followed, her face stricken with horror. Arthur, I whispered, rising to my feet. What have you done? He stood tall, his expression unreadable. I told you, Mother, patience has its limits. These men are here to ensure you hand over the key. No more games. Margaret rushed forward, grasping his arm. Arthur, no. This is madness. She is our mother. He shook her off. She is standing in the way of our future. If she truly loved us, She would not withhold what is rightfully ours. The men stepped closer. One held out his hand, palm up. "The key, ma'am." "Best not make this difficult." My knees buckled. I clutched the chain at my neck, feeling the metal bite into my skin. "You would do this, Arthur? You would bring strangers into our home to rob your own mother?" His eyes blazed. "I would do whatever it takes to claim what is mine." Tears filled my eyes, but I did not falter. "Then you will take it from my cold hands. For as long as I breathe, this key is not yours." The room crackled with tension. The fire hissed. The clock ticked. Margaret sobbed. One of the men stepped forward, but Arthur raised a hand, halting him. His voice was low, trembling with fury. "Enough, mother. If you will not yield, then you force me to become something I never wished to be." He took a step toward me. Margaret screamed, "Stop. Please, Arthur, don't do this." "Don't you see? Father was right. This treasure is a curse. It has already stolen our love, our peace. Do you want it to steal your soul too?" Arthur froze, his breath ragged. For a heartbeat, the room held still, balanced on a knife's edge. His eyes flickered between me, clutching the key with desperate defiance. And Margaret crumpled in tears at his feet. Then, with a growl of frustration, he turned on the men. "Get out! Leave us!" They hesitated, then slunk away, muttering under their breath. The door slammed behind them, leaving only the three of us in the suffocating silence. Arthur's chest heaved. His face twisted in torment. At last, he turned and stormed from the room, his cane striking the stairs as he ascended. The echoes faded, leaving only Margaret and me, both trembling, both broken. She crawled to me, clutching my hands. "Mother, he is lost. What shall we do?" I looked into her tear-stained face, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of despair. "We wait, my darling. We pray, and we hope that somewhere within him, the boy I once loved still lives." That night, I locked myself in my room once more, but I knew locks would not hold forever. Arthur's hunger had grown too strong. He would return, and next time, he might not stop. I sat by the window, the moonlight silver on the floorboards, the key heavy against my chest, and I wondered if I had been wrong all along, if by guarding this treasure, I had cursed my children instead of protecting them. My dear listeners, if your heart still beat with mine through this sorrow, I ask you, like this story, share it and subscribe. For the storm has not yet passed, and in the next part, I shall tell you how the night came when Arthur finally crossed the line, and the necklace around my neck became more than a symbol. It became the spark of a tragedy none of us could escape. The night after Arthur dismissed those dreadful men was not a night at all, but an endless stretch of shadows and unease. The house itself seemed to sense what was coming. The rafters groaned, the walls whispered, and every floorboard betrayed the faintest movement. I dared not close my eyes, though my body begged for rest. My mind kept circling the same tormenting question. Had I failed as a mother? I thought of Arthur as a boy, running barefoot across the garden, laughing as his father lifted him onto his shoulders. I thought of Margaret, gentle and patient, forever mediating when her brother's temper flared. And I thought of myself, younger, stronger, believing I could shield them both from the cruelties of life. Where had it gone so wrong? Was it truly this necklace, this small glittering chain that seemed to hold a weight far greater than gold? Or was it something buried deeper, some flaw in my own heart? I traced the key with trembling fingers, the metal cool against my skin. This key had become my lifeline and my curse. It was the guardian of the locker, the keeper of a secret that could destroy or redeem us. I whispered to my husband's memory, pleading for guidance, but the silence gave no answer. By dawn, my resolve was thin. I sat in the drawing room, pale and weary, when Margaret entered. Her eyes were red from sleeplessness, her lips trembling. She knelt before me, clutching my hands, as though she feared I might vanish. "Mother," she whispered, "we cannot go on like this. Arthur is unraveling. Last night I heard him pacing, muttering to himself. His eyes, they frighten me. He is not the brother I knew. I fear what he might do." I stroked her hair, my heart breaking. "I fear it too, my darling, but I cannot give him the key. To hand it over now would be to surrender to his madness. Your father trusted me to guard it, and I must honor that trust." She buried her face in my lap, sobbing. "Then what hope have we?" Before I could answer, the sound of heavy footsteps filled the hall. Arthur appeared, his cane striking the floor like a weapon. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, but there was a strange fire in them, the kind of fire that burns a man hollow from within. "Mother," he said, his voice steady but chilling, "I will not ask again. Today, you will give me the key." Margaret leapt to her feet, her arms outstretched as though she could shield me. "Arthur, please, look at yourself. You are destroying everything. Stop this before it's too late." He ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. "The locker holds our future, Mother. With it, I can restore this family's name, rebuild all that was lost. Do you wish your husband's legacy to wither in silence?" I rose slowly, my frail body trembling, but my spirit unyielding. "Your father's legacy was not gold or jewels, Arthur. It was honor. It was love. And you would trample both to sate your greed." His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists around the handle of his cane. "You speak of love, yet you deny me what is mine. What kind of mother refuses her son the means to survive?" Margaret cried out, her voice desperate. "She is not refusing you, Arthur. She is protecting us. Father wanted us to find the treasure together, in unity. If you take it by force, you prove yourself unworthy of it." Arthur's face twisted, torn between rage and sorrow. "Unity is a luxury we can no longer afford," he muttered, and then he lunged. His hand shot toward my neck, fingers grasping for the chain. I stumbled backward, my breath catching in terror. Margaret screamed and threw herself at him, clawing at his arm, begging him to stop. The three of us collided near the fireplace, the flames crackling as though eager witnesses to our downfall. "Arthur!" I gasped, struggling against his strength. "This is not you." But he did not listen. His grip tightened, the chain biting into my skin. I felt the cold metal strain, threatening to snap. Margaret clung to him, her cries piercing the air, her tears falling onto his sleeve. For a moment, a fleeting, fragile moment, his hand faltered. He looked down at her, his chest heaving, his eyes flickering with something that resembled clarity. "Margaret," he whispered, his voice breaking. But then, just as quickly, the madness returned. He shoved her aside, his focus snapping back to me. "The key, Mother. Give it to me." I summoned every ounce of strength left in my frail body. With trembling hands, I grasped the chain and tore it from my neck, holding the key in my fist. "If you want it, Arthur, you will have to take it from a dead woman." The room fell silent. The only sounds were the fire's hiss and our ragged breaths. Margaret stared at me in horror, Arthur in shock. For a heartbeat, the madness in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something else. Fear, perhaps, or shame. He stepped back, his cane trembling in his grip, his face crumpled, his breath hitching like a child's. "Mother, what have I become?" Margaret rushed to him, throwing her arms around his shoulders, weeping openly. He sagged against her, the strength draining from his body, the fight collapsing into despair. I sank into my chair, the key clutched tight, tears streaming down my face. My son had tried to steal from me, to harm me. Yet in that moment, I saw not a monster, but a broken man, lost and floundering, drowning in his own desperation. "Arthur," I whispered, my voice hoarse, "you are still my son. It is not too late, but you must let go of this madness before it destroys us all." He wept, burying his face against Margaret's shoulder. For the first time in many days, I dared to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the storm might pass. But I was a fool. Because even as Arthur wept, I saw the way his eyes lingered on the key in my hand. I saw the hunger still burning beneath his tears. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that the worst was yet to come. My dear listeners, if your hearts ache with mine at this moment, do not let this story slip away. Please, like this tale, share it with others, and subscribe so you may not miss what comes next. For in the next part, I shall tell you how the night finally broke, how the necklace, the key, and the truth hidden in the bank locker collided in a way that changed our lives forever. The uneasy peace after Arthur's outburst was like the hush before a thunderstorm. Heavy, deceptive, unbearable. For 2 days he avoided me. He took his meals in silence, pacing the halls late into the night. Margaret tried to soothe him, but he grew more distant with each passing hour. He no longer wept. He no longer pleaded. He simply watched me. Always his eyes were on the key, as though the chain around my neck were a chain around his very soul. I hardly slept. Each time I drifted into slumber, I woke with a start, certain I'd hear his steps outside my door. I began locking not just my room, but every drawer, every cabinet. I hid the key in different places each day, though always close enough that I could reach it. It was madness, this game of cat and mouse between mother and son, and yet I could not let go. On the third evening, the storm finally broke. The air had been heavy all day, the sky swollen with clouds. By nightfall, the rain lashed against the windows, and the wind howled like a banshee. I sat in the drawing room with Margaret, the fire flickering low, when Arthur entered. His clothes were damp, his hair plastered to his forehead, and his eyes, oh, his eyes were wild, shining with a feverish determination. "Mother," he said, his voice calm in a way that chilled me more than his earlier rage. "It ends tonight." Margaret shot to her feet. "Arthur, please don't." But he silenced her with a look, and then he turned to me. "I will not live another day in this torment. The locker holds the answer, and I will have it. If you will not give me the key, then I will take you to the bank myself." My heart pounded, my frail body trembling. "Arthur, listen to yourself. You would drag your mother through a storm, in the dead of night, to sate this obsession." He stepped closer, the firelight catching the hard planes of his face. "Obsession? No, mother, survival. You do not see the world as it is. Times are cruel, money scarce. That locker is our salvation. Father knew it, and I will not let your stubbornness ruin us." Margaret clutched his arm. "Arthur, stop this madness. Father never meant for it to be yours alone. He wanted us to share in it, to protect one another. If you take it by force, you dishonor him." He shook her off, though not harshly this time, almost regretfully. "Sister, I love you, but love will not feed us. Love will not save us from ruin." I rose from my chair, my hand pressed against the key at my neck. My voice shook, but my words were clear. "Arthur, if you take me to that locker, you will regret what you find inside. It is not what you imagine. It is not wealth. It is not power. It is something far greater and something far more dangerous." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, the truth pressing against my lips. For so long I had guarded the secret, fearing what it might do to them. But perhaps it was time. Perhaps the only way to save him was to reveal what truly lay hidden. "Come," I said softly. "If you will not trust my word, then let us go together. You, me, and Margaret, tonight. And when you see the truth, may it set you free." Arthur blinked, startled. Margaret gasped. "Mother, are you certain?" I nodded, my heart heavy. "Yes, the time has come." And so, under the storm's fury, we left the house. Arthur helped me into the carriage, though his hands trembled. Margaret sat beside me, clutching my arm as though afraid I might vanish. The wheels splashed through puddles, the horses straining against the wind, until at last we reached the bank. A cold, imposing building, its stone walls glistening with rain. The clerk, roused from his drowsy post, recognized me at once and led us to the vaults. The metallic clang of each door echoed like a drumbeat of fate. My hands shook as I slipped the key into the final lock. The tumblers clicked. The door creaked open. Arthur leaned forward, his breath ragged, his eyes devouring the darkness within. Margaret gripped his sleeve, whispering prayers under her breath. And then, the treasure was revealed. Inside the locker lay not piles of gold or glittering jewels, but a wooden box, plain and unadorned. Upon it, in my husband's hand, was a single inscription. For my children, when love is lost, may this remind you of what truly matters. Arthur's face twisted in confusion, then anger. This is it? He seized the box, nearly dropping it in his haste, and flung open the lid. Inside lay a bundle of letters, bound with ribbon, family photographs, a diary, worn and faded, and resting atop them all, a smaller box. Velvet, dark blue. Arthur snatched it up, fumbling with the clasp. When it opened, he froze. Within lay the real necklace. Not the one at my throat, but its twin. Finer and more radiant. Diamonds glistened in the dim light, each stone flawless, each facet perfect. It was a thing of indescribable beauty, worth more than Arthur could have dreamed. His breath caught, his eyes shone. For a moment, I thought he would weep again, but then he saw the letter beneath it, a letter addressed to him. With trembling hands, he unfolded it and read aloud, "My son, if you are reading this, it means you have chosen greed over love. The necklace you see is not a prize to be claimed, but a test. If you take it for yourself, you will inherit only emptiness. But if you share it, if you honor your sister and your mother, then you will find it is worth more than gold. For the true treasure is not this necklace, but the bond between you. Protect it or lose everything." Arthur's voice cracked. The letter slipped from his fingers. The necklace sparkled in the lamplight, mocking him with its silent beauty. Margaret wept openly, clutching the diary and photographs to her chest. "Father was right," she whispered. "He wanted us to remember, to love one another more than wealth. This is what he left us." Arthur staggered back, his face pale, his hands trembling. No, this cannot be. It was supposed to save us. It was supposed to be mine." His cane clattered to the floor. He fell to his knees, sobbing, the sound raw and broken. The storm outside roared in sympathy, rattling the very walls of the vault. I knelt beside him, my old bones aching, and laid my hand on his head. "My son," I whispered, "the treasure was never in gold. It was in your heart, and as long as you let greed consume you, you will never find it." For a long time, we stayed there. Arthur weeping, Margaret cradling our father's words, and I holding them both, though my heart felt shattered. When at last we returned home, the storm had passed, but the storm within my son raged on. He said little, his eyes hollow, his body frail. The necklace, the true necklace, he did not touch again. Margaret placed it back in the box, locking it away with the letters and photographs. She said we would guard them together as father intended, but Arthur was not the same. He drifted through the house like a ghost, silent, restless, lost. And I fear, my dear listeners, that his story does not end here, for the necklace still lies within our walls, its light both beautiful and terrible. And though I have seen the truth, though Margaret has accepted it, I know my son's heart still wrestles with temptation, and temptation is a shadow that never truly dies. If you have followed me this far, I beg you, do not let this story fade into the storm. Like it, share it with those who value family more than fortune, and subscribe, for there is more yet to tell. In the next part, I shall reveal what became of Arthur in the days that followed. and how the necklace's curse was not yet finished with us. When we returned from the bank that stormy night, I believed, perhaps foolishly, that Arthur had seen enough to change. The truth of the locker, the letters, the photographs, the words of his father had broken something inside him, and for a brief moment, as he wept upon the cold stone floor, I thought it had mended him too. But grief and greed are sly demons. They retreat, they hide, they bide their time, and in my son's heart, they had already taken deep root. The following days unfolded in a strange, uneasy quiet. Margaret tended to the fire, prepared meals, tried to bring some sense of normality back to our lives. I wandered the halls with weary steps, clutching at my rosary, praying that Arthur might yet find peace. But Arthur drifted like a restless spirit. He would sit for hours in father's old chair, staring into the fire with eyes that seemed to see nothing. At night, I heard him pacing again, his cane thudding against the floorboards, muttering words I could not discern. Margaret begged me to speak to him, but I hesitated. What words were left? He had read his father's letter, heard his father's plea, and yet the hunger lingered. Some lessons, I feared, could not be taught by a mother's voice. Then came the night when I woke to the sound of doors slamming. I rose from bed, my joints stiff, and crept to the landing. There, in the faint glow of the hall lamp, I saw Arthur. He was standing before the cabinet where Margaret had placed the box, his hands trembling, his breath ragged. Margaret was beside him, clutching at his sleeve, pleading desperately, "Arthur, stop! You promised. You said you understood." He tore himself free, his face twisted in torment. "I do understand, Margaret. I understand too well. That necklace is worth a fortune. Do you not see? We sit here in this crumbling house, while salvation lies locked away in a box. Father was wrong. Love will not keep us fed. Love will not repair these walls." Margaret's voice broke as she wept. "But it will keep us together. Without it, what are we? Look at yourself, Arthur. This greed has consumed you. It is killing you." I descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing like a heartbeat. "She is right, my son," I said, my voice calm, though my heart thundered. "That necklace has already cursed this family once. Must you let it destroy us completely?" Arthur turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Cursed? No, mother. It is a gift wasted by your stubbornness. Father meant it for us, and I will not let it rot away in a box while we wither in poverty." Margaret flung herself before the cabinet, her arms spread wide. "Then you will have to go through me, brother. I will not let you take it." The air thickened with tension. Arthur raised his cane, his face contorted with anguish. I cried out, rushing forward, but my old body was slow. In the flickering light, I saw his arm tremble, saw his lips quiver with words he could not speak. And then, with a roar of despair, he hurled the cane aside and collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. I cannot, he sobbed. Margaret fell beside him, wrapping her arms around him as though he were a child again. He buried his face in her shoulder, his whole body shaking with grief. I sank into a chair, tears streaming down my cheeks, my heart aching with both sorrow and relief. For a while, there was silence. The silence of exhaustion, of wounds too deep to mend in one night. But peace did not last. The next morning, Arthur was gone. He had left before dawn, his cane missing. A note scrolled on the kitchen table. "Forgive me. I cannot stay. The necklace is my salvation, and I will not rest until it is mine." Margaret wailed when she read it, her body shaking with despair. I held her, though my own spirit felt hollow. We searched the house, the grounds, but he was nowhere. He had vanished into the storm of his own making. Days turned into weeks. There was no word from him. Margaret kept the box locked, her hands trembling each time she touched it. I prayed endlessly, begging for his safe return, for his soul's salvation. But in my heart, I feared the worst. And then, one bleak morning, word arrived. A constable came to the door, hat in hand, his eyes solemn. Arthur had been found in the city, collapsed in the street, penniless and ill. He had tried to sell trinkets, forged documents, anything to scrape enough to bribe information from jewelers who might know the necklace's worth. He had spoken of diamonds, of treasure, of a fortune that was rightfully his, but no one believed him. Hunger and sickness had claimed him. By the time Margaret and I reached him, it was too late. He lay in a hospital cot, pale and frail, his breath shallow. His eyes flickered open when he saw us, and for the first time in months, I saw the boy I once knew. "Mother," he whispered, his voice weak. I was wrong. I took his hand, tears falling freely. "Hush, my son. Rest now. You are home." He coughed, his chest rattlings. "The necklace, it was never mine. Tell father, I am sorry." And with those words, he slipped away, his hand limp in mine. Margaret collapsed against me, her sobs racking her body. I held her tightly, though my own soul was shattering. My son, my beautiful boy, gone, undone not by fate, but by his own hunger. We brought him home, laid him to rest beside his father. The rain fell softly that day, the earth drinking our tears. As we lowered him into the ground, Margaret clung to me, her strength spent, her heart broken. And I, though I tried to stand tall, felt the weight of failure pressing down upon me. The necklace, the true necklace. We returned to the box, but we did not lock it away in fear. We placed it beside father's letters, his diary, his photographs, and there it remains. Not a treasure, not a curse, but a reminder of what greed can steal and what love must preserve. Now as I sit in this old house, the fire crackling low, I speak these words to you, my unseen companions. I have lost much, a husband, a son, but I have gained something too, the knowledge that love, though fragile, is stronger than gold, that a necklace, no matter how fine, is worth nothing without the family to share it. So if you take anything from my tale, let it be this: guard your love as you would guard treasure. Do not let greed poison your heart, nor envy blind your eyes. For once, love is lost. No wealth in this world can buy it back. My dear friends, if this story has touched your soul as it has emptied mine, I beg you, do not let it fade into silence. Like it, share it, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe, so that others may learn from my sorrow. For though my tale is ended, the lesson it carries must live on. And now I close my eyes, hearing still the echo of Arthur's laugh when he was a boy, the warmth of my husband's hand, the softness of Margaret's embrace. The necklace lies locked away, but the true treasure, the treasure of memory, of love, that I keep forever in my heart,